Hello, I'm SeafoodSource Editor Sean Murphy, and welcome to another edition of SeafoodSource TV, the bi-weekly video blog where we bring you news, information, and insights from the world of the seafood industry. Recently, the U.S. State Department released its Trafficking in Persons report, which classifies nations based on their efforts to curb what can only be described as human slavery. It's hard to imagine in this day and age that such practices still go on, but in some countries, it remains a daily occurrence. That's what the Environmental Justice Foundation thinks regarding Thailand's fishing industry. Just weeks before the State Department issued its findings, the nonprofit group released its own report detailing an investigation alleging handlers lured innocent workers onto fishing boats, then forced them to work against their will, long hours with little or no pay. Those who didn't behave were treated violently, and in the most extreme cases, the foundation interviewed workers who said they saw fellow fishermen beaten and even murdered on board. The Foundation's report, unfortunately, is not the first of its kind from that part of the world, but it remains a haunting reminder that the term sustainability doesn't always refer to a fishery's impact on aquatic life. Sometimes it refers to a fishery's impact on human life, too. Well, these and other allegations of trafficking have led the State Department to give Thailand a Tier 2 classification for the fourth year in a row, meaning there could be sanctions or other punishment in the near future. But for now, is there anything that suppliers and processors who source from Thailand can do to avoid supporting these practices? Well, here with us to talk about that right now is John Connelly, who is president of the Washington-based National Fisheries Institute, and he joins us today via Skype from the Institute's McLean, Virginia offices. Mr. Connelly, thanks for joining us here on SeafoodSource TV.
Always good to be on Seafood Source. It's a great tool for everyone in the seafood industry.
Well, thanks for that. Now, you saw the same report that we saw. You know, there were some videos along with it, some pictures. How shocked were you at this latest report from the Foundation?
Reports of any abuse of workers on a vessel or a farm or processing plant are always disturbing to us as citizens, as human beings, and also as customers of those products. We always like to see a little bit more specificity in reports so that the value chain can take appropriate action.
Well, speaking of action, it should be noted that, as I said, this is not the first time these reports have come out. There have been numerous reports over years, actually, talking about the Thai government. And some have noted that the Thai government has actually made some efforts to try to curb this, but clearly this report, I'm sure you would agree, this report indicates that these abuses are still going on in some fashion.
I think what's very important is to try to work with groups that can provide as much specifics as possible, because that allows the value chain and we as customers to actually work with our suppliers to eradicate any problems that do exist. It's also very important to understand the U.S. government's approach to development of that TIP report, which is a combination of working with human rights groups, industry, but also the U.S. government's own on-the-ground folks in Bangkok and throughout Thailand to make sure that they get the best specific facts available.
Yes, and we're going to keep watching the government to make sure that they continue to monitor this as well. I'm curious, too, because you've got a few hundred member companies in the members of the Institute, which cover the whole gamut of the seafood industry, processors, distributors, and so on. I'm sure a number of them source from Thailand. What, if any, advice are you giving them at this point with regards to these kinds of practices?
There are three things that NFI is doing, Sean. The first is we're asking them to work directly with their suppliers overseas, whether it be in Thailand or anyplace else, to ensure that they go through an audit of their system, to make sure that they not only audit, NFI's policy to audit not only your supplier, but your supplier's supplier. So we try to get down the value chain, supply chain a bit. The second thing is to work with the Thai government to encourage their suppliers, who we believe do a good job generally, to encourage the Thai government to act appropriately in areas of prevention and then prosecution and protection. And then lastly, work with our own government to ensure that our own government makes the right decisions based on the right facts. So we're encouraging three things: audits, engagement with the Thai government, engagement with the U.S. government.
Well, let's talk about the audit process, first of all, because that seems to be the thing that the individual companies would want to launch on their own. How much effort is it to do that sort of thing, and are you getting any kind of, not pushback, but what have been the reactions been for some of your members? Has this been something they've been able to do easily, or has it been a trial? How's it been?
they've embraced this need for audits because no one wants to be caught up short in this situation. No one wants to be surprised. So even though we have very strong relationships with companies in Thailand, there's still the concept of trust but verify. So it's always good to go over in person and check, get out of the hotel in Bangkok and go out into the field and actually understand what's occurring at the farm or at the processing plant or potentially on a vessel. And we're in the midst of actually analyzing some of the large third-party audits to provide some advice to our companies about which provide the significant rigor that the supply chain will actually accept. So we hope to have that work done actually in the next couple of weeks and present it to our executive committee for decision.
So it sounds like a lot of the companies that source out of Thailand, it isn't just it's not done blindly. I mean, regardless of what country you're sourcing from, audits are being done for a variety of reasons. It sounds like this is just kind of an extension of what kind of network might already be there for some of these suppliers.
Sure. If you just take one example, the Best Aquaculture Practice Program, they have a fairly rigorous system in social compliance. We were very pleased that their Standard Oversight Committee actually strengthened that in the last couple of months to beef up that part of their program. And the nice thing about that is it can be paired up with the environmental sustainability questions and then the very strong food safety program within BAP. So it's a nice combination of the three that organization has been able to package together so that a plant or a processing operation goes through one audit that covers three responsibilities.
And are you hearing from your members or from other members of the seafood industry? I mean, I can't believe this is limited only to Thailand. I'm sure this is happening in other places of the world. How widespread do you think this problem is based on what you're hearing from your members?
Sean, any abuse is one abuse too much. We are seeing or hearing reports of some problems in other countries. There's not the attention that has been paid to Thailand to date. But again, we need to be very careful about trying to get as much specificity in these reports as possible because we don't like to just respond to broad allegations. What we want to see is specifically this occurred at this plant so that we can go in and actually work with that plant all the way through, if necessary, encouraging a company to eliminate a supply chain from that plant or more hopefully if there's just some improvements that need to be made, whether it be, again, at the plant, the farm, or the boat level.
It sounds like you might be concerned actually about any kind of, I mean, obviously we want the State Department to take action, but if that includes sanctions, isn't that going to be punishing some suppliers that don't do these practices? I mean, surely there are some larger suppliers in Thailand that aren't doing this right now. I mean, are you worried at all about some sort of broad brush approach like that happening in the future?
It's actually a great question. We would be concerned about sanctions for a couple of reasons. The TIP process has a significant weakness in that it essentially dams a whole country. It doesn't look at very specific companies. And we would prefer if it dealt with specific companies so that we can address problems that might exist, again, rather than damming the whole country. So that's a very significant challenge for us. Also, if you go into sanctions, it brings up the concept of boycotts, which would be a terrible idea because there are tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of workers in Thailand that work for good operations. And if we start encouraging any kind of boycott of a country, it just sends the signal that, it really harms those that are working for very good operations. And the vast majority of Thai operations are excellent on both food safety, food quality, and on these issues of social responsibility.
Okay, well, it sounds like the biggest piece of advice here to your members is just know who you're dealing with. Make sure that you're auditing the companies you're sourcing from, especially if they're in Thailand, and just get out there and make sure you know what's going on. Sounds like that's pretty good advice for pretty much anybody in the seafood industry these days.
Well, my high school Latin teacher, Father Perry, would be very happy that I could actually use the words caveat emptor, which, as you know, is buyer beware.
Yes.
Absolutely know who you're sourcing from. And what we're so pleased about NFI members is they do get overseas, they do look at their operations, they do look at their suppliers, and get out in the field. And that's so important. And again, we think that's what segments NFI members out from some of the rest of the seafood industry.
Okay, some great advice there. Thanks, John Connelly. Appreciate that very much. Thanks for being here with us on SeafoodSource TV.
Thanks, Sean.
That's John Connelly. He's the president of the National Fisheries Institute in Washington, D.C., talking about recent allegations or new allegations about more human trafficking abuses going on in Thailand. Keep watching SeafoodSource.com for more news about this issue and other issues from Thailand and from all over the world and from all over the seafood industry. And be sure to check back here in 2 weeks for another edition of Seafood Source TV, where we bring you more news, information, and insights into the world of the seafood industry. For now, I'm Seafood Source Editor Sean Murphy saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you online.